Ladies and gentlemen, we are live here from Punta Mona, which is pretty remarkable if you're asking me. I mean, we lugged an entire studio over here, and I'll switch some camera angles real quick just to show off that somehow through the Costa Rican customs, we have found our way with all of this equipment to the beaches of Punta Mona on the Caribbean coast here in Costa Rica. It is the most beautiful piece of land I think I've ever stepped foot on. It's got the most biodiverse kind of rainforest-like scenario with tons of fruit trees, tons of literally every single plant that you can think of is probably here. But Stephen Brooks wouldn't agree with that because he for sure wants more. And and he and Itai, who are teaching a beautiful permaculture design course here at Punta Mona, right here, right now, that we are filming and going to put live on Superhero Academy, is going down. And there's just so much stuff. I mean, this is pre-mastermind. There's a bunch of things that are going on, and this project here has been by far one of my favorite places on the planet for me to visit. So all the legends are true. All the things that you've heard about this place, or maybe you haven't heard, but it is such a beautiful environment to meet amazing people, to be in community, to be surrounded by nature and plants, and to co-create whatever it is that is your highest excitement. So for me, that is making content, making podcasts. So of course, I want to welcome Stephen Brooks and Itai.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. We've been really trying to figure out what is it about Punta Mona? Like, what is it about this place that is so inspiring and is so... We had a couple get engaged yesterday. Like, what is it about this place that is so moving? And my father, Norman Brooks, says it best, that Punta Mona is not a place, it's a feeling. And it really is. It really is. And, you know, when we started, the goal was to create an example, you know, and I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but I just, you know, I witnessed this playground full of indigenous children get sprayed by a Chiquita banana crop duster here in Costa Rica. This was in 1995, and I was so appalled that I knew we could do better, and I knew we could do a better example of design and of how to live and how to treat each other. So on one hand, we wanted to create a physical example with the way we farmed and the way we honored our food and the way we built and the way we got water and dealt with water, but I also wanted to create a different way that we interact with each other. You know, it's like, it's kind of weird. I am the owner, and then there's employees, and then there's volunteers, and then there's guests, you know? And what does that mean? Like, what's the difference between us all? And students, you know, it's like all these different, you know, all these different ways. I keep thinking of the Haile Selassie when he said, until there's no longer first class and second class citizens of any nation. You know, it's like we didn't want there to be like people coming, hey, can I help you, sir? Can I get you something? Do you need, you know, it's not like that. You know, it's like the people that cook the food and the people that serve the food are our community. You know, it's like we're not, one isn't better than the other. One isn't really serving the other. We are here together with a common goal of trying to do something different, trying to physically live differently and also socially, you know, do things differently. And so
I think you're doing a great job at that.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, if I'm, you know, somebody who's visited a couple of eco-villages over the last 7 years of me kind of diving into this through a project in Montreal and now in Vermont and even visiting in places here, there's definitely a phenomenal community vibe. And it's not just because we hold hands before a meal, or it's not just because of the permaculture or the trees or all of the different things. It's not just of the quality of the people. It's really all of those things combined with the very real intention of what you just spoke, which is you don't want to be necessarily the boss man or the person who's like running the entire ship all the time, that this really is a community. This really is co-creative. And every time I come here, there are different people in leadership positions. It seems like there's like a group of people that is rolling through, learning, taking the lessons of the jungle here, and then bringing them back to wherever they came from. And I know for a fact that that has had quite an impact on a ton of people. We even, Garrett and I, Garrett's also on this podcast right now.
Hey, Garrett.
Hey there.
We spoke a ton last year with Devin, and we got to learn so much about what he was tracking here at Punta Mona, what he was learning while spending time here over a year. And like, there's just, you think you know what community is until you've lived in community. You think you know what it would take to build community until you actually have to step in and make that happen. And there's so many layers of that play out. So my question to you is, like, very quickly, what is the secret sauce that has kept this place alive for 23, almost 24 years now, or something like that? What is the feeling? Like, how did that happen? How did you get here? How did you, like, actually start creating that feeling? Because you've done it multiple times over with Ecovillage and even your participation in Envision and all this stuff. It's like, there's something about you particularly that I find pretty magical that seems to, like, really evoke a ton of energy.
Good question.
Yeah. What do you think does that?
I'm gonna do my best to answer. I'd love Itai to answer because I don't really know. I don't know. Wow,
I think
stump me. You want to answer?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think Steven brings so much enthusiasm to everything that he's doing. He brings so much honesty about transparency about how he feels about things, and that creates trust in the people that he's working with. And he brings so much passion about fruit trees, and passion about making the world a better place, and passion about connecting with people and connecting people. And I think it's contagious.
Because I watched you in class today, and I was feeling the same way, like watching Itai talk about biochar. Biochar is like this charcoal that we use in our fertilizers and in our soil mixes. And it almost seems like you were talking about some girl you were in love with or something. The way you were talking about biochar this morning, or talking about soils, maybe it's contagious, or we just, maybe what's happening is we're just all feeding off each other. Passion breeds passion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was feeling the same way about you this morning.
And it seems like you come from a place of, you truly embody the we, as opposed to any hierarchy that kind of flows through here. And obviously, like, decisions do need to be made by somebody, but every time you are in conversation, it's always we, and kind of really make sure that everybody feels a part of the team, everybody has a role, because we are co-creating together. And I mean, it's in permaculture, and what you're teaching all the time is an ecosystem. And
and this
those different
place
roles.
is such an evolution of so many people. Like, I've kind of been the orchestrator, but this place is been created by so many people over the years. I mean, there's so much sweat and so many tears and so much love and so much passion everywhere. And for me, it's always exciting when Itai comes, because he's been coming here now for almost 15 years. Yeah, it's crazy. And for him, just to, like, we walk around, and when I walk around here, it's like, when you go to the museum and you get those cassettes, and depending on what room you're in, there's like all that information. Like, I walk around here and there's just so much history, like with every plant, and there's not that many people that also, you have the same thing. I mean, you could walk around here and there's just like memories and people and these plants and where they sat in the nursery and things that have happened in different places and trees that we've dealt with and issues and just so much, buildings that are no longer there,
Or patterns that you observe over time.
Yeah, it's a living library of permaculture experience. And
Well, that's a good way of putting it. I mean, what was the vision building Punta Mona? Like, what was the initial idea, and then how has it continuously evolved? Like, where do you see, if Punta Mona were to continue to expand, and that's seemingly a force, happening. I think there's something like evolving right now.
Literally,
I don't
right
know.
now.
Yeah, right now. There's a new podcast booth here now and everything. No, but seriously, I think that there's something that does feel like it's evolving here. What would you say was the intention of starting a project like this? Because you're involved in multiple projects all around Costa Rica and literally the world at this point. But what do you see happening here? What's your vision for here? What was the initial vision and how has that changed?
I think what's really interesting is that it hasn't really changed. I mean, like we talked about it in the class the other day. It was like, how can we live as ecologically and as fairly and as loving as possible and demonstrate it? You know, and that's kind of such a macro meta description, but I don't think I don't think the vision has changed that much. I think the process and, you know, the tools, you know, we started, this place started, we were bringing high school and college students. Most of them would only come here for 2 nights, you know, and then in 2001, we started teaching permaculture courses where they would come for 3 weeks, you know, and then Itai and his wife, Melina, went to Colombia and had this great vision. Wait, but the 3 weeks is just so short. Like we need to train, you know, they came back with this idea. We need to train the next, you know, evolution of change makers and of dreamers. You know, it's like this whole world is broken, but who's going to fix it if nobody knows how? Because they don't teach us. So Itai and Melina came back with this vision of like, well, let's create the Ecoversity, you know, and the name is just like, oh yeah, Ecoversity, you know, it just makes so much sense. Like the world is broken. We need to fix it. How do we do that? And how can we start like training masses of people that can do that? And there's so many different aspects. There's water and how to, you know, how to collect it and store it and clean it and deal with it when it's dirty. And then there's food, and we need to grow it and process it, and we need to come up with better ways to do it and make it more diverse and make it easier. There's construction, and how can we grow the materials that we're using to build our houses, our roofs, our floors, our walls. How can we do all of these things and then train teams of people so that we can replicate these models around the world? You know, and I think this vision now is kind of, you know, it's like it's all building on each other. So they came back with this, you know, grand vision, and I was kind of like, yeah, let's do it. And, you know, it's just kind of like, I mean, how many years ago was that?
It was 70,
When Nouveau was
10 years ago?
Yeah, 10 years ago. You know, and nothing's, you know, it's like, my friend Zach used to say it's idea surfing. You know, it's like you have a million ideas, and then sometimes some of them bubble up to the surface, and it's time. You know, and it feels like now is time for the Ecoversity, you know? And where we're at now with it is this idea, you know, and I kind of want to just rewind a minute, that something that I'm really excited about, that I feel like the theme for me for 2019 for me has been so far is really this. It's so weird. I'm like, I'm not looking at you guys. I'm like,
It's okay.
Is this idea of a crossroads. You know, we're at a crossroads, el cruce en español.
Estamos en Costa Rica.
Estamos en un cruce. And Costa Rica is a cross between North and South America, but we're at this cross. And over New Year's, we had a really interesting event. And I'm sure it's what, you know, I wasn't at the Superheroes last year because I was too busy with Envision, but I'm sure it's part of why it was so magical was this crossroads of like these kind of digital nomad entrepreneurs, you know, from cities around the world, meeting these like permaculture Punta Mona people, right?
Yeah.
It's this magical crossroads, you know, that I value greatly, you know, and, you know, sometimes even in the class, people were questioning, you know, so we're working on this digital nomad zone up here where we're going to create this epic zone for digital nomads where we'll have a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot epic kitchen, living, dining, co-working, yoga space, and then, you know, 25 or 30 cabins that are really nice, and it'll be, you know, pretty high end, and people can come for a month minimum and work and live and grow together, you know. And people here are like, why do you want to do that? Like, what's the purpose of that? Like, why aren't there enough places for those people to go? And I was like, yeah, there is. And then I think back to, you know, over New Year's, our friend Carter Cleveland he has a company called artsy.com organized this New Year's party here. And it was so interesting because, I mean, he brought a whole array of people. Some of them flew in on seaplanes. You know?
Oh, yeah. I heard of that.
Yeah, so there was like a whole group of like really like fancy CEOs and interesting ones though. Not like wearing ties, but like ones that go to Burning Man, meeting, you know, and there was probably half of them. And then the other half were like Punta Mona permaculture interns and volunteers and our staff. And I feel like this crossroads where we were meeting was just so potent, and so incredible that, the long-term vision is taking, Melina and Itai's vision of Ecoversity, doing that in these, my vision is 3-month programs. I mean, it could change and evolve, but like where I'm at right now with it, to begin with is these 3-month programs, and it could grow, and this is just one campus. This isn't the Ecoversity. This is Ecoversity at Punta Mona, Ecoversity at Alegria, Ecoversity at wherever, where we start training. And so what I'm thinking for the 3 months is that the first month is like the most magical permaculture course ever, with all the best teachers. Like we know them all, and they would all love to be involved. So a rotating, unbelievable cast of teachers. I'm thinking between 80 and 120 students. And then the second 2 months is like intensives where people break out and they focus for 2 months on, regenerative agriculture or green building or community health and herbalism. Also, I was thinking like community outreach. How are we going to bring this into the surrounding communities?
Appropriate technologies and tool making.
Yeah, totally. Appropriate technology. And then art and culture. We just had Amanda Sage, who's this unbelievable visionary artist, and she held a workshop here, and it just felt, wow, we need to continue this.
Well, you're getting a diverse range of people right now. I mean, you had John Perkins here the other day. You had Amanda Sage. It seems like more and more you're breaking into a whole new, realm of people. I mean, you just mentioned the entrepreneurs and digital nomads and all that stuff.
Totally.
I mean, I think that that is clearly a force that is happening in cities, but those cities, there are tons of places like WeWork or wherever it is that people could go to work in a city, but there are very few that are actually embedded in nature where this gets to happen here. And I think that if people had more capacity to have access to, the Wi-Fi and be able to work during the day, but at the exact same time be a part of this kind of scenario, they will spend more time in a garden. Because the reality is, if you're in New York City, and now all of a sudden you finish your day at WeWork and at some co-working space, you don't have the real capacity to go and just step into the jungle and start doing permaculture all of a sudden. Like, you don't have any level of that surrounding you. So of course you're not going to learn that. Therefore you're not going to value that. Therefore you're not going to propagate that. But if you have the capacity to work for part of the day, or do your morning practice and all of a sudden go set up a garden bed in the morning, and then get on some phone calls and do some emails in the afternoon, and then get back right into the community mix and be part of the kitchen staff or whatever it is in the evening, all of that combined is a unique offering that I don't see elsewhere.
Well, again, I think it's the crossroads. So not only is the digital nomad reality happening, I don't know if I like the word nomad. I think we got to work on that.
Sure.
I don't like the word nomad, but I mean the whole digital, that whole reality is happening. The Ecoversity is happening. Punta Mona continues, and we're still doing retreats and yoga teacher trainings. And then at night, everybody meets at the stage, and there's a speaker or there's a band, and there's that kind of mixer. I went this past summer to Portugal, to Tamera, and what's going on at Tamera is there's a lot of things happening at once, and then every night everybody meets at the bar. It's pretty much a bar, although when I was there it was a non-alcoholic bar. But normally it's not non-alcoholic. And everybody would meet there. Here it would be elixirs, because we make all these incredible elixirs here. But everybody meets, and it's kind of the place where, that cross-pollination happens between the different cultures. I'll never forget the first time I went to Esalen, and I sat at a meal there, and there was literally 5 workshops going on at once. And all these different workshops attract such different people, and all of a sudden all of them are there together, and then next thing you know, you're sitting at the same table for dinner. And the conversations, because you're all going, even right now, there's a permaculture design course going on with 25 students. There's a yoga teacher training with 20 students. There's all these volunteers and interns that are different. And yet, at meals, everybody's sitting together. And I think that's where I think that's part of where the magic happens. We just create that canvas for people to paint their lives together. And I think that's really beautiful. I think that is part of the special sauce, is creating those opportunities for growth. It's if you always hang out with the same kind of people, I mean, we're talking about permaculture. It's if you're going to hang out with the same kind of people all the time, you're going to be the same all the time.
Yeah, you need to find your partner plants.
Yeah, exactly.
One that go together well, so you can find that person that's actually a badass permaculturalist, and then it says, hey, how about we document that? How about we get that video out there? How do we take that photo? How do we spread the message? Because you want the people who are actually on the ground doing like the hard work and making the implementations. You also want the people that are actually being able to spread it online and changing and shifting culture and perception online, so people do know about these places. Which I think is like really interesting about you, Stephen, is that you're very familiar with a camera, and you're always like, let's document this, let's kind of tell the story here, and you know the power of what that can bring to a place. And kind of how do you want to integrate that more with what you're doing right now, and like how do you see the power of bringing media to places like this?
Well, I mean, I'm a permaculturist, so I don't want the whole world to get on planes and fly here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I want everybody to be able to experience what's happening, you know, and I think, yeah, I just think there's so much opportunity. It's just so easy now to, you know, it's like in the old days, this setup that we have would probably cost $100,000 or $500,000 and it would fill 2 rooms.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now it fits in a suitcase and, you know, even Marc Angelo could set it up. I'm just kidding.
That's a true statement. No, I seriously. I mean, I know nothing about sound. I know nothing necessarily about cameras and all this stuff. But I found a way to learn it, and I found a way to like use this Cinemaker system and iPad, and you know, like make a live video studio. I mean, it's just amazing that you get to have that opportunity.
No, and we're filming the course. I mean, what do you think about us filming the course? I mean, this is something that Itai and I, we did it a few years ago, and we didn't really take it that serious. And we were kind of against it. It's kind of like a permaculture course online. It's almost like an oxymoron.
You know what I'm thinking about now?
What?
Is maybe broadcasting the course live rather than
Just filming it,
filming it, and then issuing it.
I mean, it's part of it. I mean, I think that we have the capacity through using systems like this, and this is where, you know, the infrastructure of, you know, a digital nomad camp, just to continue using that term for clarity, that's where that infrastructure allows that to happen more and more. You know what I mean? Because here's the challenge, right? How do, like right here, for example, where we're sitting, there is no internet. So it's not that insane that we would run a line or add an extra little system or do whatever.
It would be simple.
Yeah, and we can do that in the classroom, and we can do that in different places, and then that does become something that is doable, right? That does become something that we can actually put online and make that happen, because the truth is, the way I see it, and I kind of think I'm informed, let's say, through permaculture. I've never actually done a PDC, but I've spent so much time with so many people. I've been around PDCs all the time that I know many of the principles, many of the different pieces. But what I would say is I think in ecosystems similarly. And my way of thinking is, how do I, and I actually take this from Stephen, how do I leave the place better than I was when I first got here? And so how I think about that is from the perspective of infrastructure for documenting the story, right? It's like, in the same way that it's like, okay, we want to leave the right mycology in the ground, or we want to have the right soil biology, so all the microbes and the bacteria and all the things are there for this plant to thrive. I think about the exact same system of like, how do we host an event that leaves better infrastructure, that leaves more capacity to do the thing that I'm good at in this community? And I play one role. I'm one plant amongst a guild of plants that inherently is a part of a larger ecosystem. And by investing in that ecosystem, like literally last year's mastermind helped me afford this system, right? Like it helped me like realize, okay, wait a second, this is what's going to save me money next year. This is what's going to support me making more content, getting it out faster for more people. And this is therefore an investment. Yes, it costs thousands of dollars to get all the mics and all the things, but it was so worth it compared to, you know, just always thinking short term. So it's a little bit of it's a building man kind of mentality that you start adopting, and there's small little things that I feel like if we just continuously add these small little elements here, then that crossroads becomes like deeper and deeper and deeper, and there really is this merge between, entrepreneurs who are kind of location independent and you know, the types of people who want to learn permaculture, the types of people who want to be yogis, the types of people who want to be graphic designers. I mean, there's no better place to be a graphic designer, in my opinion, than to be surrounded by nature, because that's like the design of the universe. Right?
I mean, Marc Angelo, look what just happened. You know, so Sarah's an herbalist, and she's you know the herbalism thing happened. She attracted all these different herbalists, and look at that building over there.
Yep.
It's like the apothecary, and they're making medicines, and it was like an idea that now is totally functioning. So, I mean, why don't you dream up your most ideal media studio. What would it look like? Where on the land would it be? What does it need?
Well, so that's, I mean, like, I actually feel like that's exactly what I am doing. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
I actually, no, seriously. I mean, and Garrett can attest to this. I have that mentality of how do I invest? Like, even when we went to Alegria and we were walking down with Kara, the whole time I was just like doing the math in my head. I'm like, okay, what can I do if I put this here? And I started hosting mentorships and we started doing this. This could probably bring in about this much revenue, which helped me buy this equipment to set up this way. Like, that's the kind of way that I think. And I would imagine that you're probably doing the same thing in the plant realm, or you're probably doing the same thing in making sure the right mycology or the right bacteria is in the soil. So inherently, I'm looking to do that and then saying, well, what is the opportunity or where's the lever that moves a whole lot more than what I'm capable of doing on my own, just on my own. And the mastermind and bringing a bunch of people here is probably the fastest way that I can create that like swell of resource and excitement, all the while starting to navigate and learn how the systems work here, right? Like last year, before the mastermind, it was the first time I had ever visited a few days before it actually happened, and we brought 115 people here. So for me to come in, like, you know, principle number one in permaculture, observe, right? I had to come and have to observe, like, what is working here? Who is here? What kind of response would they have? Is this a place that would foster the right capacity for making content or digital nomads or what, blah, 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 and then continuously scaling that further and further. I feel ready to have that conversation more and more even now. And now that I'm like testing this out, like I'm literally thinking about like, oh, okay, I could do something here where I would remove the wires and these mics would be on the ground so they wouldn't be in our face so I could see you properly. Like I can like literally think out all the different pieces that would make this better over and over and over again. But you know, here's the challenge. The challenge is, like many communities and intentional communities, they suffer from a lack of resource often. And I've visited so many eco-villages, many that have failed, many that have succeeded, only because I'm able to visit them still. There is this merge between education and community living, right? So you really need a core base of community who's going to participate in like making the place run, and that's the Devins and Daniels and Katie's and Deborah's and whoever's here right now. And then you also need the kind of tourist, the type of person who comes in and brings resources here for a week or two or whatever it is, takes a course, and then brings the resources that are inherently they're like an outside force in the ecosystem. In the same way that rain, every once in a while, it doesn't rain every day, but it rains every once in a while, and that brings the resource that is necessary at that moment for the plants. And so it's creating that balance between how much are you documenting, how much are you creating there, and then how much are you investing in the long-term vision of that community.
Or if there's people with more resources, like just making it happen easier. You know?
Well, and that's the other thing.
And just coming up with the way and the structure that people like.
Yeah.
Right now, there's a couple in the permaculture course that are saying we want to be involved in Punta. We want to invest in what you're doing here. Well, what would that look like? I'm kind of just like, yeah, you know, it's like, yeah, it sounds great. You know?
Well, I asked you that same question just the other day.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, if somebody came here and wanted to build a cabin like this, or they wanted to build something smaller or whatever it is, like, what would that start to look like? Just so I can start wrapping my head around the math. Because once I can understand what is possible, then I can start piecing together in the same way that you would do a permaculture design. I start piecing together a business plan, and that's just
it's not that different. A permaculture design is basically. I mean,
it is. Yeah, you're looking at you're observing, you're figuring it out, you test different things, you flow through the patterns of learning about all the different inputs that flow and function, and then you make decisions based on that, right? You make decisions based on the landscape, you make decisions based on the plants that you have available to you, the resources you have, and your understanding of what is flowing and what is working and working with nature rather than against it. And that's what we don't learn in school. That's what we don't learn anywhere else other than in a permaculture course, other than in nature, other than surrounded by people who, like you, are stewarding that kind of idea. And I think the one thing I want to say as to why I think this place really functions and has thrived over the years is I would agree with what Itai said, which is the genuine enthusiasm that you have and the trust that you build with people through the character that you have as an individual, but then all the other characters that then come in and mimic that as well, right? It's like your father or Sarah or all these people brought in this beautiful energy that created a balance and a trust here that has been incredibly beautiful. And the one thing that really gets people excited, I think, is that they get to learn. They get to be mentored by someone, and that is a lost art of education. Right? Mentorship used to be the way that we would learn something. We would become a mason, or we would become an architect, or we would become something through spending time with those people. But I don't know how many people become architects or lawyers without ever spending a day in an architecture firm or in a law firm or sitting by an accountant or whatever it is. Like, but here they are getting these degrees, and somehow we are expecting that these people know what to do. I mean, they've never even used any of the software. They've never actually done the work. They have no concept of what that would even look like. And so here, when you're learning permaculture or in Superhero Academy, when we're learning, our hope is to bring that mentorship to the table. And because it's not just about what I teach you in any one moment, it's about the general vibe that, hey, first of all, I'm available to ask, you can ask me questions, or you can learn through osmosis. You can learn through not only the things that I say, but the things that you observe me doing. And that's what, I'll ask Garrett this, like, having learned entrepreneurship over the last couple of years and stepped further and further into it, I mean, you were doing it with pins and other stuff. How would you, could you possibly have learned this in any other way than literally just being thrown right into it and diving right in?
No, not at all. I mean, I think that school taught me the lingo and the terminology for me to kind of like make more sense of it and have words for it. Besides that, I mean, I learned way more, selling dab containers and hat pins on eBay. Yeah, I did it in the classroom. And it was a beautiful ground for that, and being surrounded by people who were actually inspired and wanted to create and wanted to be a part of something was a beautiful energy in and of itself. But to fully prosper, it really took actually doing it. And it's the quickest way to learn. I mean, maybe after years of sitting in a classroom, you could potentially pick it up, but you really have to. And I mean, the quickest way to do so is just to really get your hands dirty, start integrating, start finding that community, and also make mistakes and
and if I had to restart, I had my story is that I walked out in the middle of a GMO cornfield and soya field and planted a tree and declared I'd build the school I wish I could have gone to, both physically and digitally. And here's what I'll say. I fucked up a lot. I knew nothing about permaculture. I knew nothing about what we needed to do. I should have made way more plans and thought about things so much more, and I would have benefited big time from permaculture design courses and that kind of stuff. I just didn't even know about it. I have never even heard the term permaculture until after I started this project up in Montreal. So it's really difficult to even want to be informed by something, even want to show up at Punta Mona without first knowing about it, and then number two, having the opportunity to make that happen. And I think that there's two things that is the crossroads that we're talking about. Because once permaculture starts hitting, Facebook and all these it becomes more mainstream just in social media, now I have the capacity to actually learn significantly more about it. And all of a sudden, I get to learn, there is this place called Punta Mona that does offer these courses. There is this other place that has these different things. So I think we actually have now what you didn't have 23 years ago, but what you have today is a megaphone and an opportunity to really reach the direct audience of people who are looking for you. And that's an incredibly unique opportunity at this moment in time. And I think that this is where the tide starts shifting around people living in community. This is where the tide starts shifting around people co-creating and living a life that is more ecologically responsible.
I think what's interesting is that we might wonder, why all of a sudden are CEOs from LA and New York, and why all of a sudden are this whole other, why are we all meeting at the same place? Because we're all dreaming the same thing. It's we all want the same dream. And it seems like until we start putting our feet on the ground and actually purchasing land and start building buildings and start planting food and start collecting water, we're just going to keep doing the same thing. We're going to keep still living in that old way. So I think that's why people are, CEOs are looking to permaculturists and being yes, let's hang out. unfortunately, Itai and I have to go continue teaching our course because it's time.
But that's not unfortunate. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But thank you so much for
Yeah.
doing the work. Thank you so much for participating and being the teachers, and just the level of care and enthusiasm that you bring. You know, how many times you've done this over 15 years or whatever it is. Just I could sense that. I know it's appreciated by all the people who are here, and know that at least I definitely know Garrett is as well, in support of all of these things. So we're going to continue making content. We're going to continue telling your story.
Cool.
That's the point.
I hope you say nice things.
Much love, brothers.
We will.
guys.
Garrett, let's stay on a little bit.
Sure thing.
So there's something that I want to kind of point out, that because I also think that it was a part of your journey, which is you ended up going and doing kind of an internship of sorts, almost like a mentorship with Earthships, and then you also did one with me soon after. I mean, a couple months later, basically, or a year later?
I would say about 9 months.
Yeah, so a couple of months later.
Yeah, like 6 months.
I mean, it seems like to me that had, without a doubt, kind of shifted the course of your life. I mean, I don't know what you'd be doing otherwise, but I would imagine it'd be kind of different than hosting a podcast at Punta Mona right now.
Probably.
What would you say this mentorship and all these different pieces have brought to the table for you? Like, how do you feel about integrating learning with doing and actual projects live, on the ground?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big supporter of just getting out of your comfort zone in general. Any way that you can kind of like mix up your environment, any way that you can kind of surround yourself with new people and new ideas and shake up the waters and see where the dust settles is great for somebody. And if you can do so in a way that you're actually learning and you're actually testing out ideas and following your bliss in some way and kind of being able to learn while you're doing such, and not so much just like showing up for the experience for experience sakes, but also trying to extract knowledge, trying to extract the next path, then that's extremely beneficial. And then also, I mean, from aligning that with my interest at the time, which was sustainability, Earthships, and what can be done on a communal sense, and how can we actually really revolutionize the way that we live, both on an architectural front and also communal front. That the best way to do that, and what I recommend to anybody, is to actually go out there and find that community and start testing it out. Maybe you'll love it, maybe you don't like it. I mean, maybe the first place you go to isn't the best fit for you, but you'll start to learn, you'll start to build, and you'll start to see, number one, what you do like, and number two, which is just important, what you don't like. And the goal at the end of the day is just to make sure that you're not sitting at your deathbed or wherever it may be, that you're not saying that what if, but you actually went there and you were like, I thought I would love this, and I did love it, or I thought that I would love that, but it wasn't the best fit for me. And that's really came through both of those experiences. On the Earthship front, I was able to, fully integrate with that community. And then when it came to actually going up to Montreal, it was like, okay, now my next journey is to see how I can continue this vagabond lifestyle in a way that I can provide for myself, using my entrepreneurial spirit, since I've had selling rip CDs out of my locker while I was in middle school, but aligning that with impact and with subjects that I'm really passionate about. And to do that was, I mean, why would I try to go do it by myself whenever I can go be surrounded by people who are already doing it? It's just like, it's finding those little hacks in life. There's no reason why you have to make 1,000 mistakes when somebody's already done it for you. And there is going to be some times along the way where you'll have to make those mistakes no matter what. And I think that's just like an internal conversation you have to have yourself with that. If you are going to put yourself on a limb, you're going to fall every now and then. And if you're not going to put yourself in a situation to fail, then that means you're just stuck in a little closed box in some corner. If you're living life, you're going to deal with failure, you're going to deal with setback, you're going to deal with success and that sweetness of that as well. So having that internal conversation of whether you're going to do anything with your life, that sometimes I'm going to mess up and I'm going to be okay with that. And I personally would rather make those mistakes and kind of speed up that learning curve, doing things that I love and doing things that I'm very passionate about, as opposed to making those same internal frustrations and stressors and successes doing something that I'm not totally resonate with, because I'm still young in that sense. And I mean, I say like 25 is the new 18. Nowadays, we're living so long, and just like the way that people are maturing, you have more time to have that freedom. Even if you're in your 30s or 40s, whatever, you still have so much time. You still have another 40, 50 years that you can learn and live.
Well, there's something that I found really interesting about what you told me, and I didn't know this until you told me it probably a couple months ago. You were like, hey, I'm going to come and like do this mentorship in Montreal, and for whatever reason, at one point you made like a decision that you were just going to stick with it for 3 years.
Yeah, it was my master's.
And this is like
degree.
coming up. Yeah, this is coming up right now. Like 3 years is like, let's say I would say April 1st is kind of like the 3-year mark of where we would be at. And so what's crazy is that on April 1st, you're coming up to Montreal and we have an office and you're going to be there for, roughly 6 months, and we'll come in and out, but you know what I mean? Talk to me about like why, like, how did you even come up with that? Like, how did you know to stay so committed? Because I think I truly believe that one of the unfortunate realities of digital nomads and much of the culture around entrepreneurship today, and not just entrepreneurship, coaching and just all the things, freelancers as well, is that we have a kind of a lack of loyalty. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is we start to skip from one thing to the next, and it's like, oh, we're going to build on Pinterest, and then, oh, we're going to build on Instagram, oh, we're going to build here, and then you build effectively nowhere.
Yeah.
And that I see that happening. It's like a plague that is running through our community, because they're never committed to something long term. It's like, even the fact that we came back here and hosted the mastermind back here means that we have so much of a leg up this time. There's so much more that you can do once you've done something for long enough. And that boils down to the principle of 10,000 hours.
Yep.
I'm not saying you have to do 10,000 hours in everything you start. Like, there's definitely things that I've started, I'm like, you know what? This is not the direction I want to go in.
Exactly.
But how did you, talk to me a little bit about how you were capable of knowing, you know what, maybe I should be involved in this for 3 years. How did you know that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important conversation, and I would love to hear more on that topic from other people and how to effectively say yes and how to effectively say no to things, specifically when it comes to business, because you're going to hit those points where you want to quit. And it's also about like knowing that's another reason why you should pick things you're passionate about, because that's the kind of that internal conversation like I was speaking about a second ago. That's what's going to happen. There'll be times where the facade clears and it kind of fucking sucks. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, what am I doing here? And I really don't have like a great reason why I picked that. It was just something that came to me internally where I was like, I'm going to stick with this. This seems like right. This seems like it's heading in the right direction.
Post mentorship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know exactly why that number stuck with me or what that was coming from. But then it just kind of grew and grew. And I was like, this is my master's degree when it comes to social entrepreneurship and marketing, and I'm going to do so more on an apprentice level and see what that does. And it was continuing, like there was definitely those ups and downs, but I decided to fully kind of see what this journey entails, and excited for April 1st to come around and kind of do a full analysis on what that looks like. And
well, I was about to ask, like, if you had to give a pre-analysis right now, you did 3 years as an apprentice. If you had to take like 2 or 3 takeaways, or 1 or 2 takeaways, if anything, from this 3 years, and then 1 or 2 takeaways, or not takeaways, sorry, 1 or 2 intentions for the next 3 years, right? What would you say are 2 or 3 things you learned from this last 3 years, and what would you say are 2, 3 things that you would want to see going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the big things that I've taken away is, one is making it up as much as you are, in a sense, and like I'm starting to learn that like sometimes it is good to like know what you're doing first. So I'm like reanalyzing when that's most optimized, but also like I mean that motto is so great, especially for anybody starting out, is like just start and just do. And just create.
And it doesn't mean that you don't have a plan. To make something as much as you are I say that more from the perspective of decision making.
Yeah.
Which is like, look, I have my experience, but I'm still making it up.
For sure.
Right? I'm still, at the end of the day, no matter what we're doing, I'm still making a random decision here or there that inherently says, this is what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to do it. Like what? Yeah, everything is arbitrary. It's like, how many people did the mastermind? Oh, is it 50? Is it 100? Is it this? Is it that? I mean, you could make 1,000 plans. But inherently, at some point, I just make it up. I just like, you know what? This is what we're going to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, it also just helps take people off the pedestal of what we place people at, which is another kind of like valuable lesson that I've learned the past couple of years, is that I've had the opportunity, I don't know if it's the law of attraction or watching The Secret whenever I was in high school, but I've been able to like surround myself by some of the people that I looked up extremely high, like Phil Drollet, Jordan Lejeune, some of these, and I could go on the list and list. I've just met so many incredible people, and to be able to meet them and just see that they're just regular people and they're just making it up and they're just kind of like having fun with it and they're very passionate about it and they stick to it. And I think that's been a great opportunity to see that firsthand and to meet heroes and become friends with them and just have conversations and just see everybody as a human and not hold people to pedestals. Has been another one as well, and that power of that network. And if you're just a good person and you're passionate about it and you want to add value and you have some basic understanding of how to be in social dynamics, then you can get along with a lot of these people.
You mean you don't run up to them and ask them for selfies?
Yeah.
You're not just like, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Keep it cool.
Yeah, you gotta rock it cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think moving forward, some of the next things I'm looking forward to the most is actually creating more content and kind of getting myself in front of the camera more. So that's been always something I've held back from, and over the 3 years I've always been in the situation of wondering what people back home will think about me, or like wondering what they come from West Virginia. I have so much support, so many friends, and I have like a bunch of great things to say, but I'm also going into a completely different environment of like hanging out. I haven't worn shoes in the past 7 days. And like, they're like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, where are you at? How are you surviving? And I've kept it very low key of what I do. I've always used the flag of the organization that I'm working through to kind of just put out the impact that I want to make, and I just never do it through my own face. And I've done it more and more, and it's not that I've been completely silent, but I'm looking forward to stepping that up and really, what did he say, taking off the ego condom or whatever, where you're like going through behind other work, you can still keep your own integrity, but can keep your ego kind of thriving in that way. But if you're able to put yourself out there and make your mistakes publicly or make your successes publicly, then you're able to fast track that. I don't know exactly what I'm saying, but I'm looking
when
forward
you're
to
doing it publicly and you're putting out your own name with your own brand on it and your own spin and the whole thing.
Yeah.
Inherently, there's something different about doing that than when you're doing it under another flag.
Exactly.
When your face is on it and you are saying something and you are saying it publicly, even if 5 people are watching and you got 7 likes on your last Instagram post, it doesn't matter. It's out there, and there's this big gap of people who, in many people who just feel like whatever they have to say isn't good enough. What's interesting about that, and I get that, it's funny, but I get it from a different perspective, which is, I don't think that what I have to say isn't good enough. I think that my ability to tell it in a story that I feel is like beautiful isn't good enough. So you kind of move through this and just get to the next tier of that problem in some way, shape, or form. But yeah.
Yeah. And then the last thing I would say is, I just had it a second ago. I forgot what I was going to say, but making more content is one, and then the other one is, because the past 3 years we've really been able to build a network of, say, 300 million weekly reach, and that's the kind of quick way to sum up the amount of distribution that we have. And learning all those hacks and learning how to play with social media and hack social media and to become friends with and create deep relationships with so many amazing creators that have huge media outlets has been amazing, and it's been a way to get powerful messages out there. But now I'm going into a place of really capturing and embodying the essence of 1,000 True Fans model and kind of bringing that back in, because what we've been able to create and is great to work with other clients and to work through our own organization businesses to use that network, but also kind of getting on a way in a scalable sense that anybody can tap into using other social media principles to gain their 1,000 True Fans.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's great to talk about distribution, but not everybody can plug into the distribution that we have, because there's just not enough slots in the day. There's just not enough media outlet to do that. So how can I talk to somebody who's just starting out and give them that inspiration of, you don't have to have this network of 300 million, but you should really be trying to just capture deep connection and deep relationships with
which actually people have
audience.
way more capacity to do.
What I would
and it will actually function better.
Yeah, I would much rather have 1,000 True Fans than just a million likes on. I wish it was 5 o'clock so I could have a drink meme, because there's no substance behind that. Yeah, the number looks great, but that's not the impact that you should be looking for. And it's it's just kind of what the culture is at this time. We look at bigger numbers as that's more value, but it's just harder to track in terms of impact.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how do you put a simple number to positively shifting somebody's life, specifically when they're not messaging you, letting you know that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think that this is a wrap on this beautiful little podcast here that we've got going on. For those who want to know more about Punta Mona, who want to know more about taking a permaculture design course, number one, we will be putting them online. So even if you can't make your way out to Costa Rica, we are going to be working at that at some point this spring and or early summer. And we also want you to know that this place is so beautiful. This place deserves so much more attention. So if you loved what Stephen Brooks had to share, if you loved anything that Garrett had to share here, smash that thumbs up button, to use a little Peter McKinnon.
Smash it.
Smash it. Just make it. If that's something that you're into. And
If you're into that.
no, I mean, seriously, if you love this, if you want to see more of this, if you are a supporter of this podcast, your comments, your likes, your shares, all of that stuff means a ton. Getting back to that 1,000 True Fan thing, we want to know who you are, right? And every time you guys like or comment or whatever, we get to know who is listening, and therefore what we can do to serve you, what questions we can ask, or what guests we need to have on to maybe inform you further, or to give you more information about whatever it is that you want to learn. So yeah, I think we're gonna go check out and go jump in the ocean or something. Just hang out in the jungles here in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So, pura vida. See you guys later.
Peace.